welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast with Joe Pine, co-author of The Experience Economy, Dave Norton, an experience strategist from Stone Mantle, and me, Aransas Savas, a meaningful motivation strategist at Stone Mantle. Every week, we bring you a topic that is trending and related to experience strategy. We unpack what's working and what isn't in leading experience strategies in hopes that we can all keep learning together and creating more meaningful and more impactful experiences. This week, we've been looking at an HBR article. This one was written by Kevin Evers. It is titled The Strategic Genius of Taylor Swift. His subhead is Her Success is About Much More Than Her Music, and Innovators Can Learn From It. Now, this is an article very much about innovation strategy. It really looks at the key ways that Taylor, consciously or maybe unconsciously, intentionally or unintentionally, has leveraged core tenets of innovation strategy in order to maintain relevance for many years as one of the top 10 best-selling artists of all time. So, Dave and Joe, as we dive into this, I'm curious, top line, what was the most striking takeaway for you from this article? Dave, let's start with you.
You know, it's a good article. It is an HBR article, and there's some useful things, I think, in terms of like kind of marketing, product type of things that are covered. For example, they talk about, tapping untapped markets. That's not a new idea, but they're making the argument that he's making the argument that Taylor Swift is doing that. Making the argument that you got to maintain productive paranoia. You've got to kind of keep that momentum going, that innovation momentum, to keep the customer engaged, and you've got to build stickiness. I'm not necessarily sure that these are new concepts. I find it interesting. To me, Taylor Swift really represents the experience economy. But I don't see in this particular strategy article much about experience strategy. It's more, like I said, marketing and product. And so I think that's a real issue. I think her strategic genius is that she understands how to create an emotional experience with her audience.
Yep.
And, full stop right there. But we need to unpack what that means, right?
That's right. It's emotional and social. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Joe.
Well, I've got to say, for the second week in a row, I am like nowhere near in the market for the subject that we're talking about. Right? I have never intentionally listened to a Taylor Swift song in my life.
I've heard. Yet you know who she is,
right? And I also want to say for our listeners, that's immaterial to the fact that we can analyze what she's doing,
that's right,
and be able to develop principles that come out of it. To Dave's point about the experience economy. When she ran the Eras tours, right? Eras tour, I kid you not, there were scores. I mean, like 40, 50 different articles about Taylor Swift that specifically mentioned the experience economy, right? I know because I got a Google alert on the term experience economy. And Taylor Swift blew up, as the kids say today, right? I got that right? Right? It blew up on my Google alerts. So
totally.
I've long said that the Walt Disney Company is the premier experience stager in the world, but in terms of what's going on today in the experience economy, right, you can't go wrong without talking by talking about Taylor Swift.
Absolutely.
And so I think Dave's right, though. The article doesn't really approach it from that standpoint. It's as if Taylor Swift was a product, right, as opposed to a physical product, even as opposed to the experience that she is, and the way that she brings together the studio albums, right? The streaming, which I didn't know that much about until I read the article, the way she affected streaming, but in particular the live tours, right? In the face of streaming, live tours is the way you connect with audiences. It's the way most popular artists make money today, right? Is not off the albums and off the streaming. And as an aside, also say, I had no idea she started as a country artist. I just thought pop the whole
Oh,
time.
wow.
Yeah, that tells you how little I know. But in terms of experiences, she was great. The other thing I'll mention is Dave mentioned this too about her connection with consumers, right? I thought that was good, and being able to see what she does and how she specifically thinks about it, and in our term strategizes. I don't know that she actually sort of denies doing that in the article, but she is a strategist. And she does think strongly about how she interacts with them to get them involved, to get them delving deep into her words and her songwriting, and figure out what does stuff really mean, who is it really about, and so forth. And it reminded me of my friend Eddie Yoon, who wrote a Harvard Business Review Press book called Super Consumers. And that Taylor Swift perhaps has more super consumers than any other business in the world, right? That'd be my guess, right? And super consumers are not just fans, and they're not just fanatic. They buy a lot, but they're emotionally connected, right? They're really involved and have that emotional connection to the quote unquote product, which is the Taylor Swift experience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll tell you what was most fascinating for me, because I'm an overachiever and I did secondary research on this with my 16-year-old. She's a new fan. She's much younger than Taylor. Totally different generation. And yet, when I read her the headline of this article, I said, what do you think it's going to talk about? She literally knew every single point in this article, which tells me that this story has been wildly successful in its ability to reach consumers and become a part of the mythology of this character.
Can you give us an example of what?
No, she started with, I told her the headline of the article, and she said, well, Taylor is an artist. She is a songwriter first and foremost. She is not a strategist. And 2 lines into the article, the author says the same thing. And then my daughter continued to go through beat by beat, essentially what's been uttered in this article, and explain it as a part of the artistry and the authenticity. And I'm using that word super intentionally because Joe wrote that book too. And I really think that's the magic of this mythology. It is, and he brings it up a little bit in terms of her collaborations. In the article, he says, she collaborated with somebody else. She had this reputation as a songwriter. And so to collaborate with another songwriter was a bit of a risk. And yet they were able to authentically put both of their stamps on it so that it felt super truthful. And my daughter, when I asked her about the appeal for her, she said, I think of her as a big sister. Right. And so they talk about this in the article as well, how across generations, these women, whether they think of her as a daughter, a peer, an older sister, a mentor, there is this sense of she is me. At some point in my own evolution, she understands, she's telling the truth about my experience because she's telling the truth about her experience, and there's some universality in there. And that, to me, is why the experience has been so successful, because it's so rooted in authenticity and empathy. Hey friends, you probably already know that Joe, Dave, and I lead a year-long program called the Experience Strategy Collaboratives. It's designed to help strategists build better experiences. It's springtime, so of course it's that time of year when we invite a new group of experienced strategists to step into the collaboratives and become master strategists. You and your company join the program, and you decide on a project or initiative that you want to be informed by the research we do. Other non-competing companies also join. Each quarter, we have summits where you meet people from other industries. And in between, Stone Mantle does amazing research on your behalf to advance your initiative and the other companies. This year, our theme is Only Companies with a Point of View Survive. And for listeners of this podcast, we have an amazing experience to offer. For one happy listener, we'll be giving away a one-person membership. That's a $35,000 value. Yep. That happy winner can participate in the collaboratives for free. There's just a few roles, and you have to subscribe to the Experienced Strategist Substack to be eligible. We've posted an entry form in the show notes, which is also available on Substack. Go to theexperiencedstrategist.substack.com for all the details.
And one of the, she actually follows one of the principles we talk about in the book on authenticity, which is how do you if you're authentic, you know this, and particularly it means you're true to self and you are what you say you are. But then how do you do something new? How do you go beyond the bounds of what people are expecting from you? And she did it very well by the article talked about how she did this song with 3 songs on an album actually with the producer and songwriter you talked about. And it said, though, that when you listen to it, it's unmistakably Taylor Swift. And it's unmistakably this other person, Mayer, I think was his name.
John Mayer. The other
That's not
person.
who she was writing. No, that's not who she was writing with. No, there is conversation about her dating John Mayer, but that is not who she was collaborating with.
No, it was Keith Urban.
No.
Keith Urban.
Not that she was songwriting with. No, it's not.
Right. So anyway,
Mike somebody.
The point was unmistakably the producer.
My daughter would know his name.
Right. So you get both of those that are there. So she never lost. It wasn't like she jumped so far away from where she is that she could still maintain that true to selfness, that key standard of authenticity, while obviously being very different than she was before.
And to me, that's what this article should be about. Really, is how it is that she's able to stay true to herself. This is what companies need to understand. These are the principles that they need to understand. She wouldn't call herself a strategist, and neither would your daughter, Aransas. But she's principle driven.
Because that wouldn't feel authentic.
But she's
right, like that's controlling the story, which is brilliant.
But what I think she is principle driven. I think what she has is a series of principles that she relies on that create that authenticity. And, and they're not all kind of values-based principles. I'm sure people feel that as well. But there's some principles like the way that you just want to spend time with her. Everybody wants to spend time with her. They love her songs. Anybody who interacts with her finds her very pleasant to be around. She doesn't like confrontation. She tries to avoid it as much as possible. So I think that there's a lot that she's doing, but I think the reason that all of those other articles were written is that she demonstrated how a stadium should be used. She demonstrated how social media should be used. All of these different experiential platforms, how streaming should be done. All of these different experiential platforms, she's brought them together. I mean, that takes real organization, real teamwork. She's got a great team that supports her, and she knows what she's doing as well. And she made what, $1.6 billion?
Worth $1.6 billion, I think it was.
Yeah.
I
Off
think
of one tour.
What we're seeing here is that she's really, and this is sort of what you're saying, she's really good at doing what we teach in the collaborative. She's doing functional, emotional, social, and aspirational jobs really well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And by paying careful attention to how she optimizes each of those jobs individually, she's creating something that has allowed her to authentically evolve, right? Because that is an important point of this, right? That she does change frequently, but she's changing in a way that still feels really rooted and true to who she is. And so that lets us create trust. And in this trust poor environment that we are in, that trust is an incredibly valuable commodity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I use her as an example of someone who has a point of view. I think more than just being a brand, which it's an image, it's not, but she really has a point of view about life. It works its way into her poetry. I think she's a poet first, and then a songwriter as well. But when I talk to my kids about Taylor Swift, or my nieces and nephews, they're like, she's a poet, right? They really resonate with
Yeah,
the
it's
words
the
that she
lyrics.
uses,
Yeah.
and it comes from that point of view that she's established that makes everything else kind of work. And that's what I wish this article. I wish this article had kind of identified some new ground and really understood, things like being true to yourself, like you talked about, Joe, authenticity, um, you know, uh, that this was time well spent. Some of the,
Right.
I wish it had been about experiences, but they talked about it as if she was a package,
Right.
wrap
Exactly.
up,
Right.
and you ship out to people. And it's just not the right nomenclature.
Or when
Well,
you talk about
well, there's
jobs
certainly
being
more
done
to
as well.
learn from her if we look at her as an experience strategist than as a saleable product.
Yeah. Joe?
Yeah, well, I want to get back to the jobs to be done too, because I think for super consumers, she's doing a systemic job, right? Because they're
Yes,
wrapping this into their life. It's something
that's
they're
right.
thinking about all the time. Although Aransas put you on the spot a little bit, I didn't see anything in the article related to aspirational jobs. Is there something with your daughter in particular that you think there's an aspirational job being done here?
Yeah. And I think we hear it in the mentorship piece of
Hmm.
this that I mentioned, that there is this sense that, and it's not about like, I'm going to be famous. It's like, I'm going to have a girl squad.
Yeah, she's a guide. She's a
Yeah,
guide.
she's a guide.
In some ways,
And
she's kind of
she,
like a female
Particularly through
oracle.
breakups, I understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able, I'm going to get through this. And so much of it, though, is about the girl squad. And you
Yeah.
look at the experience is designed for girl squads, multi
Hmm.
generational, friend squads, you name it. It is about community. And so that's the aspirational job I think she's doing is one that
Yeah.
says you're going to have your pals, because that's been like that's been a huge part of not only her music, but her brand is these girls getting through things together.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that there are a lot of women, young women, who are looking at her as a mentor, and they're watching her life and through poetry and so forth, and they're saying, "Okay, I've learned something from you." So she's guiding,
Mm-hmm.
she's teaching along the way. She and Blake Lively are having a little problem right now, but that's
She and Selena, though, besties forever. I mean, she has so many girlfriends,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's like they cheer each other on. And while they have beef with other girls sometimes, or other guys sometimes, they do it in this really human way.
Hmm.
If her feelings are hurt, she uses emotional language to say, my feelings are hurt, instead of like creating, a war on these things. She talks about them in the language of pain
Hmm.
and an emotional experience. It's just really universal. And so it's that empathy again that makes her part of it, makes her an inspiration, because every girl can say, I've been underestimated. I've been overlooked. I've been hurt by a loved one, a lover, a friend.
Hmm.
Right. Like it's just, and that it is that emotional relevance.
Yeah, yeah. Do you
Hopefully,
agree,
they'll.
Joe? Or what do you think? Are we convincing you?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can see that. I don't know if it's more natural versus, well, of course, all of her stuff I think is sort of natural as opposed to again being thought out in that. So I think that you can certainly see. Well, I actually hope she aspires that, or that girls aspire to become after her is in fact experienced stagers. Right? And not necessarily
Mm-hmm.
music, but whatever industry to think like if I want to be like Taylor, then I need to create the biggest, baddest experience out there in whatever field I want to choose in. Now that would be a major transformation.
Yeah.
Do you
Uh,
think your daughter was inspired?
Mine?
Yeah.
They're older than your daughter. So
Yeah.
Right, but your daughters, I think, are really more prime. The fact that my 16-year-old is interested in Taylor Swift, that's what's wild to me. But the fact that your daughter would be is actually really expected, right? Because they would have grown up together.
Lizzie would have grown up with
yeah.
this.
Well, yeah. My younger daughter is a certified experience economy expert. So yeah,
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Was it more Joe or Taylor?
Yeah.
We'll have to find out.
I just think if there is a case study that in today's world demonstrates what you were talking about, Joe, back in the 90s, it is Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
I mean, the Disney case study is a case study of the 60s, 70s, and 80s to a large degree. I mean, they've kept going, but Taylor Swift is a modern example of the power of experiences to generate economic growth.
Right.
And I think that's what it's about. We talk about experiences and we talk about how empathetic and that's cultural capital, that's emotional capital, but Swift is also about making billions of dollars.
Well, and let's think about this too a little more broadly. So Chapel Roan is probably the hottest artist among Taylor's original audience, I'd
I
say.
thought you were
at this
talking
point.
Swiss chocolate. Sorry, who is this?
Chapel Roan. And she first came onto my radar because she was on YouTube and my kids were watching her at every show offer up a different costume theme. And I was like, what is happening here? Right? And her music is great. She's a great performer, all of that. But it was her ability to create an experience for her fans that felt inclusive and interactive, right? And that's so much of what we're seeing with Taylor. It's so much of what we see even with Lady Gaga and her fans, right? It's like, let's set an expectation of how you engage in this experience. And then I'm going to give you something that makes us feel like we're relating audience to performer so that you're not watching the experience, but you are partaking in the experience. And so, like, if we were to spend a little more time on why a Taylor Swift experience is so exciting and energizing for an audience, that to me is what really is at the root of it. It's like, yes, that social job of I'm going with my girls and we're going to have the time of our lives together and we're going to make memories. But it's also, I'm going to feel like Taylor and I are connecting in some way.
Totally agree.
So maybe it's a good way to end. But to Dave's point earlier, I believe I'm correct in this. I could be wrong. But I believe it was at a Taylor Swift concert that somewhere, some nearby university registered it on a seismograph.
Yeah.
Right, because of how engaged her fans were. I may be wrong on that. It may have been some other act, but I know I'm right. In fact, in like all these articles that talk about her in the experience economy, is it made a measurable difference in GDP. So
Yeah.
Massive.
Yep. When they go to
State
Kuala
level,
Lumpur,
city
Malaysia,
levels, sometimes country level.
Measurable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
if you're looking for proof that experiences drive economic reward, then there you go.
oh yeah.
Look no further.
Experiences create value. Experiences create value for services. Experiences create value for goods. She's an example of the entire pyramid
Right.
being represented.
And according to you, transformations as well at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. This has been fun, guys. For those of you listening, thank you for continuing to tune in with us. Please share these episodes with other experienced strategists and reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you all over on LinkedIn, or you can find the entire catalog of podcast over at stonemantle.co on the Experience Strategy Podcast tab.